The emergency meeting aboard the Eternal Dominion brought together the highest levels of Imperial leadership. Admiral Zex Thara, Captain Zathek, and High Counselor Vexandra studied the test results that had shattered their understanding of galactic power. Captain Zathek spoke first, his voice heavy with the weight of defeat. They didn't just outperform us. They made our best technology look like children's toys. Our weapons couldn't penetrate their shields. Our ships couldn't match their speed or maneuverability. High Counselor Vexandra's crystalline form flickered with worried patterns of light. If one human vessel can defeat our finest warship, what happens when they build an entire fleet? What happens when they decide they want our territory? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Empire had maintained peace through superior technology and overwhelming force. No species had ever challenged their dominance because no species had ever possessed the capability to do so. Admiral Zexathara stood at the conference room's main display, watching long-range sensor readings that showed something even more disturbing than the test results. Honored Counselor, we may not have long to find out. Our deep space sensors are detecting multiple human vessels near their home system. The display showed 3 massive ships emerging from Earth's solar system. Unlike the Liberty, these were clearly not exploration vessels. They were enormous construction platforms, followed by what appeared to be civilian colony ships carrying thousands of passengers. They're not just exploring anymore, Captain Zathek observed grimly. They're expanding. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Liberty, Captain Morrison was coordinating with the new arrivals. The UNS Washington and UNS Lincoln had brought supplies and reinforcements for humanity's first permanent settlements beyond Earth. Captain, Communications Officer Amy Walsh reported, Admiral Patterson sends her compliments from Earth Command. The colony ships are ready to begin settlement operations on the worlds we've surveyed. Dr. Helen Brooks looked up from her science station. Captain, I'm detecting Imperial sensor sweeps of our new ships. They're obviously concerned about our expansion. Can't blame them for that, Morrison replied. From their perspective, a potentially hostile species just demonstrated superior technology and is now building colonies in their territory. Executive Officer Patricia Wong studied the tactical display. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Zex Thara. He's requesting another diplomatic meeting. Of course he is. Amy, set up a secure channel. The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Zex Thara on his ship's bridge. The Imperial officer looked tired and worried, as if he had not slept since the demonstration. Captain Morrison, thank you for accepting my communication. I need to discuss the implications of your recent technological demonstration with the highest levels of Imperial government. Morrison nodded. Admiral, I understand your concerns. Perhaps we should arrange a formal diplomatic conference. I think both our peoples would benefit from honest discussion about the future. 3 days later, the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history took place aboard a neutral space station that the humans had constructed using their advanced fabrication technology. The station itself was another demonstration of human capabilities, built in just 2 days using self-assembling materials that the Empire had never seen before. The Imperial delegation included High Counselor Vexandra and representatives from 6 major species. The human delegation was led by Ambassador Lisa Parker, who had arrived aboard the Washington along with diplomatic staff and technical advisors. Honored delegates, Ambassador Parker began, humanity comes to this meeting with genuine desires for peaceful coexistence and mutual benefit. We understand that our rapid technological advancement has created concerns about our intentions. High Counselor Vexandra's crystalline body sparkled with nervous energy. Ambassador Parker, our concerns are not about your intentions, but about your capabilities. In 50 years, your species has achieved technological levels that took our empire 10,000 years to develop. Dr. Brooks, serving as the human scientific advisor, leaned forward. Counselor, I think the key difference is in our approach to scientific development. Your empire achieved dominance and then focused on maintaining stability. We never stopped pushing the boundaries of what's possible." "But how?" asked Imperial Science Advisor Teclon. "Our analysis suggests that some of your technologies should be impossible according to known physics." Ambassador Parker smiled. "Advisor Teclon, we discovered that physics is more like a set of guidelines than a list of absolute rules. When you stop accepting limitations and start asking why those limitations exist, you often find ways around them." The negotiations continued for hours, but gradually a framework began to emerge. Humanity would share selected technologies with Imperial scientists in exchange for access to galactic trade networks and diplomatic recognition. More importantly, they would work together to encourage innovation throughout the galaxy. Admiral Zexathara, who had been quietly observing the discussions, finally spoke. "Ambassador, what you're proposing is a fundamental change in how galactic civilization operates. For centuries, we've maintained peace through controlled technological development. And that approach worked," Morrison acknowledged. "But it also created stagnation. There are probably dozens of species in your territory that could make breakthrough discoveries if they were encouraged to experiment instead of following established patterns." The implications were revolutionary. Instead of maintaining control through technological superiority, the Empire could maintain leadership by fostering innovation and scientific advancement throughout their territory. High Counselor Vexandra considered the proposal carefully. "This would require changes to our fundamental governmental structure. We would need to shift from administrators to facilitators." "But think of the possibilities," Dr. Brooks said enthusiastically. "Imagine what could be discovered if every species in the galaxy was encouraged to push scientific boundaries instead of following predetermined development paths." Over the following months, the agreement they reached changed galactic civilization in ways that no one had anticipated. Young scientists from dozens of worlds began studying at human research stations, learning that the phrase "impossible" was just an invitation to try harder. The Empire's rigid technological hierarchy began to adapt, incorporating human concepts of distributed research and rapid prototyping. Species that had been considered primitive began making breakthrough discoveries when given access to advanced tools and encouragement to experiment. Admiral Zexathara, now serving as the Empire's primary liaison to humanity, reflected on how completely his worldview had changed. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through superior firepower. They had done something far more profound. They had proven that there was always a better way to do things, if you were willing to question everything you thought you knew. Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Liberty as they prepared to depart for humanity's newest research station. The ship that had once seemed impossibly advanced was already being upgraded with improvements discovered through cooperation with galactic scientists. "Course laid in, Captain," reported Navigation Officer Lisa Parker from the bridge. "Take us out, Lisa, and remind engineering that we're testing the new quantum tunneling drive on this trip." As the Liberty disappeared into a fold in space-time itself, using technology developed jointly by human and Imperial scientists, the future of the galaxy looked brighter than it had in centuries. The Empire had learned that true strength came not from maintaining technological dominance, but from encouraging others to reach their full potential. And humanity had discovered that their greatest gift to the galaxy was not their advanced technology, but their refusal to accept that anything was impossible. The test would take place in an empty star system far from any inhabited worlds. Captain Zathek of the Imperial warship Eternal Dominion had never been more nervous in his 50 years of military service. His ship was the pride of the Imperial fleet, 2 kilometers of advanced armor and weapons that had never been defeated in battle. Across from him, the human vessel Liberty waited silently in space. It looked small compared to the massive Dominion, but Captain Zathek had read Admiral Zexathara's reports. Size meant nothing when dealing with technology that ignored the known laws of physics. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "all systems are ready for the demonstration." Particle beams charged to 60% power as requested by the humans. Captain Zathek nodded grimly. The test was simple in concept, but terrifying in reality. The Dominion would fire on the Liberty using non-lethal weapons while the human ship demonstrated their defensive capabilities. Then the Liberty would show their maneuverability while the Dominion tried to track them. On the bridge of the Liberty, Captain Morrison reviewed the test parameters one final time. The Imperial request had been politely worded, but the intent was clear. They wanted to see exactly how advanced human technology had become. "All stations report ready, Captain," announced Executive Officer Patricia Wong. "Very well. Amy, signal the Imperial fleet that we're prepared to begin." Communications Officer Amy Walsh opened the channel. "Captain Zathek, this is Captain Morrison. We're ready when you are." The response came immediately. "Thank you, Captain Morrison. Beginning. The assessment now." The first particle beam lanced out from the Dominion, a brilliant stream of energy that struck the Liberty's shields. On both bridges, crews watched their sensors with intense concentration. Captain Zathek expected to see the typical shield flare and energy absorption that marked all known defensive systems. Instead, something impossible happened. The Liberty's shields seemed to analyze the incoming energy and then adapt to it in real time. "Sir," his weapons officer called out in confusion, "their shield frequency is changing. Each shot is being absorbed more efficiently than the last." On the Liberty's bridge, Tactical Officer Ryan Clark monitored their adaptive shielding with satisfaction. "Shields holding steady at 98%, Captain. The defense grid is learning their attack patterns faster than they can modify them." Dr. Helen Brooks smiled as she watched her systems work. "The beauty of adaptive technology, Captain. Instead of building stronger shields, we built smarter ones." Captain Zathek ordered his weapons teams to increase power and vary their attack frequencies, but nothing seemed to affect the human ship's defenses. After 10 minutes of continuous fire, the Liberty's shields were actually performing better than when the test began. "Impossible," muttered Zathek's science officer. "Their defensive matrix is evolving. It's like their shields are alive." The second phase of the test began when Captain Morrison gave the order that would change Imperial understanding of space combat forever. "Ryan, show them what the Liberty can do." The massive human warship suddenly accelerated directly toward the Dominion's position. But instead of the gradual acceleration curve that marked all Imperial vessels, the Liberty moved as if it had no mass at all. It reached incredible speed instantly, then executed a perfect 90-degree turn without any apparent deceleration. Captain Zathek watched in growing horror as the human vessel danced through space around his ship. The Liberty moved like a fighter. Craft, despite being the size of a heavy cruiser, it spun, rolled, and changed direction in ways that should have killed every person aboard. "Sir," his navigator called out, voice tight with panic, "they're pulling maneuvers that should generate over 100 times normal gravity. How are their crew members still alive?" The answer came from the Liberty's bridge, where the crew felt nothing more than a gentle sensation of movement. Chief Engineer Brandon Hayes had perfected the inertial dampening system that made such maneuvers possible. "Captain," he reported calmly, "inertial dampeners operating at full efficiency. We could pull twice these maneuvers if needed." For 30 minutes, the Liberty demonstrated maneuvers that violated every principle of space combat that Captain Zathek had learned in his long career. The human ship moved through space as if gravity and inertia were mere suggestions rather than fundamental forces. The test concluded with the Liberty positioned directly above the Dominion, having outmaneuvered the Empire's finest warship without taking any meaningful damage. In the observation chamber of Admiral Zex Thara's command ship, the entire Imperial High Command sat in stunned silence. High Counselor Vexandra's crystalline form had lost all its normal sparkle. "They made our best warship look like a training target." Admiral Zex Thara nodded slowly. "The humans didn't just win that engagement. They demonstrated that our entire approach to space combat is obsolete." On the Dominion's bridge, Captain Zathek stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. The human ship had performed maneuvers that his computers classified as impossible. Their shields had adapted to his weapons faster than his crews could modify their attacks. "Sir," his weapons officer said quietly, "if that had been a real battle, we would have been destroyed in the first 5 minutes. The implications were staggering. The Eternal Dominion was the Empire's most advanced warship, crewed by their best officers and equipped with weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. Yet against a single human vessel, it had been completely outclassed." Captain Morrison opened a communication channel to both Imperial ships. "Captain Zathek, Admiral Zexathara, I hope this demonstration has been informative. We're prepared to continue with additional tests if you have specific requests." The casual confidence in Morrison's voice made the situation even more unsettling. The humans had just proven their technological superiority, but they showed no signs of arrogance or aggression. They seemed genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation. Admiral Zexathara activated his own communication system. "Captain Morrison, this has been very informative indeed. I believe we need to schedule more detailed discussions about future relations between our peoples." As the three ships prepared to return to their respective bases, Captain Zathek found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about military science. His ship represented centuries of Imperial innovation and improvement. Yet it had been made obsolete by a species that had achieved spaceflight only decades ago. "Sir," his science officer approached cautiously, "I've been analyzing the sensor. Data from the test. The humans aren't just using advanced technology, they're using completely different principles." "Explain." "Our shields absorb energy until they overload. Theirs learn and adapt. Our ships fight against inertia and gravity. Theirs seem to convince the universe that physics works differently for them." Captain Zathek nodded grimly. "And if they can do this with one ship, what happens when they build a fleet?" The question would haunt Imperial military leaders for months to come. The test had proven that humanity possessed technology that made the Empire's best efforts look primitive. More importantly, it suggested that human advancement was accelerating rather than slowing down. Back on the Liberty, Dr. Brooks was already working on improvements based on what they had learned during the demonstration. "Captain, the test gave us some interesting data about Imperial technology. I think we can improve our systems even further." Captain Morrison smiled. "Always looking for ways to do things better, Helen. That's what makes us human." Neither he nor his crew realized that this simple philosophy, the constant drive to improve and innovate, was what made them so terrifying to a galactic empire that had stopped asking questions centuries ago. The emergency session of the Imperial High Council had never been called together so quickly. 12 different alien species sat around the massive circular chamber, their various forms creating a symphony of worried sounds. Clicks, whistles, electronic beeps, and low growls filled the air as they discussed Admiral Zexathara's shocking report. High Counselor Vexandra, whose crystalline body sparkled with nervous energy, called for order. Her voice rang like musical chimes as she spoke. "Fellow counselors, we have gathered to discuss a situation that challenges our fundamental understanding of galactic development." Counselor Rothkill, a large insect-like being, clicked his mandibles aggressively. "This is impossible. Our science teams have studied thousands of species over 10,000 years. Technology develops in predictable patterns. There are no exceptions." Admiral Zexathara stood in the center of the chamber, still shaken by what he had witnessed aboard the human vessel. Around him, holographic displays showed sensor readings and analysis reports that made no sense according to everything the Empire knew about physics. "Honored counselors, I have seen their technology with my own eyes. I have traveled aboard their vessel. They have achieved direct faster-than-light travel without dimensional shifting. Their artificial gravity systems produce no detectable field distortions. Their energy efficiency rates exceed our theoretical maximums. Counselor Thaneris, a floating jellyfish-like creature, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns of disbelief. Admiral, our xenoarchaeology team surveyed Earth only 50 years ago. They found a species using primitive chemical rockets and crude electronic communication. How could they advance so rapidly? The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Empire believed. For centuries, their scientists had taught that technological development followed natural laws, just like physics or chemistry. Young species started with fire and tools, then slowly progressed through predictable stages. It took thousands of years to achieve spaceflight and thousands more to develop advanced technology. On the other side of the galaxy, aboard the UNS Liberty, Captain Morrison was holding his own emergency meeting. His senior staff gathered around the conference table while Communications Officer Amy Walsh presented her analysis of intercepted Imperial transmissions. "Captain, they're in complete panic," she reported. "Their High Council is in emergency session, and from what I can understand of their communications, they're questioning their basic scientific principles." Dr. Helen Brooks looked up from her tablet. "That makes sense. From their perspective, we've just broken every rule they thought governed technological development." Chief Engineer Brandon Hayes leaned back in his chair. "I've been analyzing their ship designs from our sensor scans. It's fascinating, Captain. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly uniform." "What do you mean?" Morrison asked. "Every ship we've detected uses virtually identical systems. Same power cores, same propulsion methods, same computer architectures. It's like they standardized everything and then stopped innovating." Dr. Brooks nodded thoughtfully. "That would explain a lot. When you become the dominant power in the galaxy, there's no pressure to keep developing new technology. Why fix what isn't broken?" Executive Officer Patricia Wong studied the tactical displays. "But that creates a dangerous situation. If you stop innovating, eventually someone else will surpass you." "Like us," Morrison said quietly. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Council chamber, the debate was growing more heated. Counselor Zarthek, a reptilian being similar to Admiral Zexathara, slammed his clawed hand on his desk. "This human ship cannot exist. Our physics do not allow for their claimed capabilities. Therefore, they must be using some form of deception or unknown technology borrowed from another species." High Counselor Vexandra's crystalline form dimmed with worry. "Counselor Zarthek, what other species? We have cataloged every advanced civilization in the galaxy. No one possesses technology beyond our own level." Admiral Zexathara stepped forward. "Honored counselors, I must respectfully disagree with Counselor Zarthek's assessment. I have personally observed their technology in operation. This is not deception. They have genuinely achieved breakthrough developments that our science considers impossible." The chamber erupted in confused voices. Some counselors refused to believe the report, while others worried about the implications. If one small species could advance so rapidly, what did that mean for the Empire's dominance? Counselor Vexandra raised her voice above the noise. "Admiral, in your professional opinion, how did they achieve this advancement?" Zexathara had been thinking about that question since returning to his ship. "Honored Counselor, I believe they never stopped asking why. Our empire achieved dominance and then focused on maintaining control. We perfected our existing technology, but stopped seeking new approaches. The humans appear to treat every scientific law as a puzzle to be solved rather than a limit to be accepted." On the Liberty, Dr. Brooks was explaining the same concept to Captain Morrison. "Captain, I've been reviewing their technological databases that they shared during the diplomatic exchange. Their development model is completely different from ours." "How so?" "We innovate constantly because we have to. We face new challenges that require new solutions. But once a species achieves galactic dominance, they switch from innovation to administration. They stop asking how things work and start focusing on maintaining what they have." Chief Medical Officer Dr. Carl Turner looked up from his tablet. "It's like a form of technological stagnation. They reached a plateau and stayed there. Brandon Hayes nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. And because they control so much territory, they never encountered problems that their existing technology couldn't solve. So they had no reason to keep pushing boundaries. Back in the Imperial Council chamber, the implications of Admiral Zexathera's report were sinking in. If the humans could achieve such rapid advancement, other species might be capable of similar breakthroughs. The Empire's technological superiority, which they had taken for granted for centuries, might not be permanent. Counselor Rothkill's mandibles clicked nervously. Admiral, what are these humans' intentions? Are they seeking conquest? No. Counselor, their stated mission is exploration and peaceful contact. They seem genuinely interested in diplomatic relations and scientific exchange. But what if they decide to expand their territory? Asked Counselor Thanaris. Admiral Zexthara considered the question carefully. Honored counselors, based on my observations, the humans are not aggressive, but they are also not limited by the same constraints that govern our own expansion. Their technology allows them to travel faster and more efficiently than any Imperial vessel. The chamber fell, silent as the counselors absorbed this information. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Empire faced a species that might be technologically superior. High Counselor Vexandra's crystalline body flickered with decision patterns. Admiral Zexathera, we need more information. Can you arrange for a formal demonstration of their capabilities? I believe so, Honored Counselor. Captain Morrison seems willing to cooperate with reasonable requests. As the council session continued, none of the Imperial leaders could imagine how completely this encounter would change their civilization. For 10,000 years, they had been the most advanced species in known space. Now they were about to discover that advancement was not a destination, but a journey, and the humans had never stopped traveling. The emergency session concluded with a decision that would reshape galactic politics. The Empire would request a formal technological demonstration from the humans. They needed to understand exactly how far behind they had fallen and whether it was possible to catch up. Admiral Zexathara accepted the assignment with mixed feelings. Part of him was excited to witness more human innovations, but another part worried about what they might discover about the Empire's own limitations. Admiral Zexathara had commanded starships for over 2 centuries, but nothing had prepared him for what he experienced when he stepped aboard the human vessel. The moment his shuttle entered the Liberty's docking bay, every instinct told him that this ship operated on principles he did not understand. The artificial gravity felt perfect, not the slightly heavy sensation of Imperial gravity generators or the subtle vibrations that came from their best equipment. This felt exactly like standing on a planet's surface. His aide, Commander Yilnara, looked equally confused as they walked across the deck. "Sir," she whispered, "their gravity system produces no detectable field distortions. How is that possible?" Zexathera did not answer because he had no answer to give. A human officer approached them, a tall female with short brown hair and friendly eyes. She wore the same dark uniform they had seen on Captain Morrison. "Admiral Zexathara, welcome aboard the Liberty. I'm Commander Patricia Wong, the ship's executive officer. Captain Morrison is waiting for you in our main conference room." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Zexathara tried to analyze everything he saw. The walls seemed to pulse with a soft inner light that provided perfect illumination without any visible source. The air felt fresh and clean, with no trace of the recycled staleness that marked every Imperial vessel. Plants grew in alcoves along the walls, their green leaves impossibly healthy for something living in deep space. "Your ship is very different from our designs," Zexathara commented. Commander Wong smiled. "We believe that just because something is functional doesn't mean it can't also be beautiful. Our engineers work hard to make sure our crew feels at home even in deep space." They entered the conference room, and Zexathara was struck by how natural it felt. Large windows showed the stars outside, and more living plants created a sense of being in a garden rather than on a warship. Captain Morrison stood as they entered, along with several other human officers. "Admiral, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. I'd like you to meet my senior staff." The introductions followed. Diplomatic protocol, but Zexathara was more interested in studying the humans themselves. They moved with easy confidence, showing none of the rigid formality that marked Imperial military culture. When Dr. Helen Brooks was introduced as the ship's chief science officer, she actually smiled at him. "Admiral, I've been looking forward to meeting you. We have so many questions about galactic civilization." The formal discussions began with Captain Morrison explaining humanity's peaceful intentions. Lieutenant Commander Steve Ross outlined their exploration mission, while Dr. Brooks described their scientific goals. Everything sounded reasonable and honest, but Admiral Zexathara found himself focusing on the impossible details. The conference table appeared to be made from a single piece of some unknown material. The chairs adjusted automatically to each person's body shape. The air circulation system operated in complete silence. Every small detail suggested technology that surpassed Imperial standards. "Captain Morrison," Zexathara said finally, "I must ask directly. Our records show that your species achieved nuclear fission only 200 years ago. Yet this vessel demonstrates technology that exceeds our own capabilities in several areas. The Galactic Empire has had 10,000 years to perfect spaceflight. How do you explain this advancement?" The humans exchanged glances. Commander Wong leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, human progress doesn't always follow straight lines. We tend to make sudden breakthrough discoveries rather than gradual improvements." "Demonstrate," Zexathara said flatly. Captain Morrison nodded to his chief engineer, who had been quietly monitoring their conversation from a wall panel. "Brandon, show our guests the Nelson Drive." Dr. Brooks activated a control panel, and the windows automatically darkened to protect their eyes. "Admiral, what you're about to see is our faster-than-light propulsion system. Most species achieve FTL by entering alternate dimensions or folding space. We found a different approach." Through the darkened windows, Zexathara watched the stars begin to change. But instead of the familiar shift into hyperspace that marked Imperial FTL travel, the stars simply started moving faster. The Liberty was accelerating beyond light speed while remaining in normal space. Commander Yilnara grabbed her chair as she watched the impossible display. "Sir, they're exceeding light speed without dimensional transition. The energy requirements alone should be impossible." Dr. Brooks heard the translation and smiled. "Commander, that's exactly what our physicists said when we first proposed the theory. We discovered that the universe is much more flexible than most people assume. Instead of fighting against physical laws, we learned to work with them in new ways." Admiral Zexathara felt something close to panic rising in his chest. In 10,000 years of galactic history, no species had achieved direct faster-than-light travel in normal space. The Empire's best scientists had proven it was impossible. The energy costs were too high. The physics simply did not allow it. "How?" he whispered. Captain Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Admiral, I'm not a scientist, so I can't explain the technical details, but our people have always believed that the word impossible just means we haven't figured out how to do something yet." The demonstration continued for several minutes. The Liberty moved through space at speeds that should have torn the ship apart, yet everyone aboard felt nothing. No stress, no vibration, no sense of movement at all. Finally, the ship returned to normal speed, and the windows cleared. "Your inertial dampening system," Commander Yilnara said in a shaky voice. "It completely neutralizes acceleration forces. Our best systems can only reduce them by 90%. Dr. Brooks nodded enthusiastically. "That was one of our first major breakthroughs. We realized that instead of trying to counteract inertial forces, we could convince space itself that we weren't actually accelerating." Zexathara's mind struggled to process what he had witnessed. These humans spoke of convincing the universe to change its rules as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They treated fundamental laws of physics like suggestions, rather, than absolute limits. "Admiral," Captain Morrison said gently, "I can see this is a lot to absorb. Perhaps we should take a break and continue our discussions tomorrow?" As they prepared to return to their shuttle, Commander Wong offered to give them a tour of the ship's engineering sections. Admiral Zexathara declined, knowing he was not ready to see more impossible technology. Walking back through the Liberty's corridors, he noticed details he had missed before. The walls seemed to repair small scratches automatically. The lighting adjusted to provide perfect visibility for each person's eyesight. Even the simple things like door controls responded to thoughts rather than touch. When their shuttle finally detached from the human vessel, Commander Yilnara sat in stunned silence for several minutes before speaking. "Sir, what are we going to tell the High Council?" Admiral Zexathara stared at the Liberty through the shuttle's viewport. The human ship hung in space like a work of art, beautiful and graceful and completely impossible. "The truth," he said finally, "that everything we thought we knew about technological development is wrong, and that these humans might be the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever encountered." "Dangerous, sir?" Zexathara continued staring at the alien vessel. "Any species that can rewrite the laws of physics is dangerous, Commander. The question is whether they're dangerous to us or dangerous to our enemies." As their shuttle returned to the Dominion's fist, neither Imperial officer could shake the feeling that the galaxy had just changed forever. Behind them, the Liberty continued on its peaceful mission, its crew unaware that they had just shattered the scientific foundations of the oldest civilization in known space. Admiral Zexathara had never seen anything like it in his 300 years of service to the Galactic Empire. The massive alien ship hung in space like a silver needle, its hull reflecting the light of distant stars. Every line of the vessel screamed advanced technology, yet according to his data files, this was impossible. "Sir, the unknown vessel is still approaching our position," said Commander Yilnara from her station. Her voice carried a note of worry that made Zexathara's scales bristle with unease. The Admiral stared at the main screen of his flagship, the Dominion's Fist. Around him, his bridge crew worked at their stations with nervous energy. In all their years of patrolling this sector of space, they had never encountered anything they could not identify or understand. "Show me the sensor readings again," Zexathara ordered. The holographic display filled with data that made no sense. The ship was huge, easily twice the size of an Imperial heavy cruiser. Its energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. Most troubling of all, it was moving through space without any visible means of propulsion. "Have we identified the species yet?" the Admiral asked. "That's the problem, sir," replied his intelligence officer. "The ship's design matches no known spacefaring race. The energy patterns are completely foreign. But, sir, there's something else." Zexathara turned his massive reptilian head toward the officer. "What is it?" "The materials analysis suggests the ship is built using techniques we've never seen before. The hull appears to be some kind of self-repairing metal alloy. And, sir, the power readings indicate they have a reactor that's operating at efficiency levels we consider theoretically impossible." On the bridge of the UNS Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison studied the alien ships that had been following them for the past 6 hours. His tactical officer had counted 12 vessels, all roughly the same size and design. They moved in perfect formation, like pieces on a chessboard. "Any luck with their language, Amy?" Jake asked his communications officer. Amy Walsh looked up from her console. "I'm getting somewhere, Captain. Their transmissions follow mathematical patterns that suggest a highly structured language. The computer is making progress with the translation protocols." Jake nodded and turned to his science officer. "What do you think, Helen? Are they hostile?" Dr. Helen Brooks studied her scanner readings. "Hard to say, Captain. Their weapons are powered down, but they're definitely military vessels. The formation suggests they're being cautious rather than aggressive." "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Ryan Clark from the weapons station, They're moving into what looks like a standard intercept pattern. If they wanted to attack us, this would be how they'd do it. Jake considered his options. The Liberty was humanity's first deep space exploration vessel, built using breakthrough technologies that had surprised even Earth's best scientists. They had come to this star system looking for signs of intelligent life. It seemed they had found it. Amy, can you open a channel to their lead ship? Working on it now, sir. The translation software should be able to handle basic communication. Meanwhile, aboard the Dominion's Fist, Admiral Zexathara was facing a crisis of understanding. His sensor teams had been studying the alien vessel for hours, and each new piece of data made less sense than the last. "Admiral," called his chief engineer, "I've been analyzing their propulsion system." "Sir, I don't think they have one." "What do you mean?" Zexathara demanded. "I mean they're not using any form of drive technology we recognize. No fusion rockets, no antimatter engines, no dimensional shift generators. They're just moving through space as if the laws of physics don't apply to them." The Admiral felt a chill run down his spine. In 10,000 years of galactic civilization, certain rules had never been broken. Ships needed engines to move. Energy had limits. Technology developed in predictable ways. This vessel seemed to ignore all of those rules. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien ship. Put it on screen." The main display flickered to life, revealing a strange bipedal creature with pale skin and strange tufts of hair on its head. The being wore a dark uniform with colorful patches and symbols. When it spoke, the translator worked overtime to convert the sounds into something understandable. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Nations Starship Liberty. We are explorers from the planet Earth, seeking peaceful contact with galactic civilization. Can you understand this transmission?" The bridge of the Dominion's Fist fell silent. Every crew member stared at the screen in shock. Admiral Zexathara felt his mind struggling to process what he had just heard. "Did it say Earth?" he whispered. His intelligence officer quickly pulled up the relevant files. "Sir, Earth is listed in our databases as a primitive world in the outer spiral arm. According to our last survey 50 years ago, the dominant species had barely achieved chemical rocket propulsion. They were classified as pre-contact, estimated to need at least 500 more years before developing interstellar capability." Zexathara looked from the file data to the image of Captain Morrison on his screen. The human appeared calm and confident, nothing like the primitive savage described in the Imperial records. "There must be some mistake," the Admiral muttered. On the Liberty's bridge, Jake waited patiently for a response. He could see the confusion on the alien commander's face, even though he couldn't read the creature's expressions very well. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "I'm picking up a lot of chatter from their fleet. The translation software suggests they're very surprised about something." "Probably surprised that we can talk to them," suggested Dr. Brooks. "From their perspective, we just came out of nowhere with technology they don't recognize." Finally, the alien admiral seemed to compose himself. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of long command, but also a note of uncertainty. "Captain Morrison, I am Admiral Zexathara of the Galactic Empire 4th Fleet. You claim to represent Earth, but our records indicate your world lacks the capability for interstellar travel. How do you explain this discrepancy?" Jake smiled slightly. "Admiral, human development doesn't always follow expected patterns. We tend to make rapid advances when we set our minds to something. I'd be happy to discuss this further if you're interested in formal contact." The silence that followed stretched for long minutes. On both bridges, crew members waited tensely for their commanders to make the next move. Admiral Zexathara was thinking furiously. If these humans had somehow achieved interstellar flight centuries ahead of schedule, what else might they be capable of? Their ship was clearly more advanced than anything in the Imperial fleet, yet they claimed to come in peace. "Captain Morrison," he said finally, "I believe we need to talk. Would you be willing to meet aboard my flagship for formal discussions? Jake looked around his bridge. His crew members nodded encouragingly. This was exactly what they had hoped for when they left Earth. We would be honored, Admiral. Shall we arrange the details? As the two fleets began preparations for the historic meeting, neither side could imagine how much this encounter would change the galaxy. The Empire was about to learn that their understanding of technological development was dangerously incomplete, and humanity was about to discover that they were not alone in the universe, but they might be more advanced than anyone expected.